only confuse you. Only confuse.
Good morning and welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You're now in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio, the way it should be heard. Today's topic will be intelligent resistance number 2. We had number 1, and there was quite a bit of response to that, and it has come up again. So we will go into that. So get your questions ready so that you may ask them of Mr. Fuller or whatever question that you would like to ask. It doesn't have to be on the subject. But as the opening statement said, now think about this, if you do not understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Mr. Fuller wrote that, and if you really are honest with yourself, if you really are honest with yourself, if you don't understand racism, white supremacy, what it is, everything else that you think will only confuse you. Powerful statement. Anyway, we're going to go into that today. Intelligent Resistance had a couple of questions about that. Another popular thing has been done is the listeners have really contributed with a list of movies, and I've had 5 or 6 letters that even spoke to that list of movies or documentaries, different series, and we will also get into that. Now, the phone lines are open. You can call this number, 1-877-932-9766 to get in contact with the show, which is the best way to get in contact with this show. You can also do this. You can go to TalkTainmentRadio.com and hit the Listen Live button, and you're there. You're there. Just also hit the like and subscribe button. Another way, if you want to view us, which you can go to the YouTube channel, type in the word Talktainment. Scroll down to radio and then type in radio, and then you'll move down again, Talktainment number 2. And when you do that, there we are live. Hit the like and subscribe button also on that one. And finally, you can do this too, Facebook.com/Talktainment. And finally, you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Now, we have a slew of Gmails, and I may not get to your question today. Most likely I won't, but we will at some point get to your question. Okay, let me start off by saying this. Good morning to you, Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
Okay, and as usual, this particular day, how are you doing?
I'm still learning.
Okay, you're still learning. Okay, we are at number 31 on the movie list with about 9 potential to go. Of course, these are your suggestions of movies. Do you have at least 4 or 5 more before we round this bad boy out?
What was that last one that I said?
The last one, the last one was Best Years of Our Lives. That was where you start off. Mm-hmm.
Well, there's another movie that's sort of similar to that in lessons and whatnot. It's about, you may say, post-World War II era, the best years of our lives. And it's another one called The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit.
Oh, wait a minute. The Man, I'm writing this down.
The Man in the Gray Flannel Suit. And that's about business people post what we call World War II. And some lessons in that.
Okay.
Particularly those 2 movies, The Best Years of Our Lives and the man in the gray flannel suit.
Okay.
Kind of capsulizes how things were done at the top level of, well, first of all, among white people, their general existence after World War II in the Northwestern Hemisphere.
Yes.
And how things were done at the business level. That's the man in the gray flannel suit.
Okay.
Post what they call World War II. And also there's at the lower, what you might call just the average come day, go day level of people, there's another movie called Marty.
Marty? Okay.
Marty with Ernest Borgnine.
Okay.
That's and one that also kind of at the same level and also giving information about the thinking of people and how they went about doing things called The Pawnbroker.
The Pawnbroker. Okay. That's not what Paul Newman is. No, probably
No,
not.
that was with Rod Steiger.
Oh, okay, Steiger.
It's
Okay.
kind of an obscure movie.
Okay, that's 34.
But the setting of it is a pawnbroker shop. Rod Steiger plays the part of the pawnbroker, but the location is in Harlem, New York.
Okay.
Right.
Number 35.
And I'll say Key Largo. That's one with Humphrey Bogart, and it keeps showing over and over again on some of the movie channels. Some of the, I think it's on TCNM that it shows a lot.
Yeah, Turner Classic Movies.
American movie classics, because it's considered.
Okay, and the last
Key Largo.
Okay, and the last one for today?
12 Angry Men with Henry Fonda.
12 Angry Men.
Yes, there's an updated version of that, but I like the original version. I prefer that.
Is that
the way it's presented, called 12 Angry Men. It's about a trial.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
All right, well, next week, we'll probably round this out. We'll start off with number 37. All right, phone lines are open. 1-877-932-9766 is the number. Our topic today is intelligent resistance number 2, but we have a caller on the line. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Oh, hi. How you doing?
Okay. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, my question for Mr. Fuller is that, am I correct that his birthday is this weekend?
Mr. Fuller?
Hello, go ahead.
Yeah, he said something about your birthday this weekend.
I said something about what now?
Your birthday this weekend, is it or what?
Oh, October 6th, 1929.
October the 6th, okay.
But I always say, according to the code, you only have one birthday. I like for people to think about that.
Okay.
And then you have breath days. These are all the days that you're breathing. And then the only thing you have after that is a death day. But you only have one so-called birthday. That's the day you're born. You're not born every 365 days.
Okay. Go ahead, caller.
I just want to say to you, I admire you very much, and I think you're a genius. And I know that you said your age. I believe you're like 88 or 89 years old. And I'm just curious to know, how do you... I've had parents that had Alzheimer's, and I just want to know how you stay so sharp and so on point with everything, even at this age.
Okay.
Well, I'm deteriorating. I'm getting there. I mean, oh yes, there will come a day if I keep staying here, I won't be having this conversation on the phone, and you all will be able to tell me if I am still on the phone, say if I'm around 10 years from now, but I probably won't be making any sense at all. I'm probably not making sense now. That's for you to determine.
Oh.
That's for the listeners to determine, but I mean, for sure, I will be deteriorating at some point.
I
Okay.
just want to say to you, God bless you. Thank you. I love you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you so much. And you have a nice birth weekend, even though you don't celebrate it. You do it this time, all right? Thank you.
Well, I say that every day is a day that's given to you, and you're supposed to be on your assignment that day. And so it doesn't make any difference about when you were born. You just get to your assignment, and you keep at it until you finish your assignment or until your assignment finishes you.
Okay. Intelligent resistance is the topic today. Phone lines again are open. Let's do this. And this gentleman told me that I could use his name, and I will. If you tell me or ask me not to use your name, I will do that too. But he said that he didn't mind me using his name. His name is Victor Palmer, and he wrote this. Mr. Bobby, can you ask Mr. Fuller if being codified with counter-racist science means being physically and psychologically able to resist daily mistreatment and subjugation by indirect and direct violence by racists? In other words, intelligent resistance.
Yes, that's what the codification is for. Everything is supposed to be about intelligence. Everything that you do is supposed to be based on intelligence, which means going about doing everything the best possible way. And that includes controlling your emotions. That's intelligent. Emotions serve a purpose, but emotions are supposed to lead you to logic. That's the purpose it serves. It's supposed to give you the incentive. That's what emotions are for, to give you drive. You got to have emotions in order to get the drive to do things. But emotions are somewhat like the steering mechanism for the engine in a car. You have to have a steering wheel. Otherwise, the engine is just running and the car is moving, but you got no steering wheel, so the car is all over the place. Okay, so emotions, that's the steering mechanism. The emotion is supposed to do the steering. So don't let your emotions get out of you. It's like taking your hands off the wheel. You got all this power going, but you don't have your hands on the wheel. That's all that intelligence and emotions, the function that they serve. That's what it's about.
Yes, sir. Okay, let's do this. TalkTameItRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one that I'm going to share with you. We had a staff meeting or a staff get-together. I believe it was last week. And I had a chance to meet some of the other show hosts. And one of the show hosts that I met was one of the show hosts of the Your Time to Travel. And I asked her several questions about that because I had been promoting that show. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you have any travel plans or any information or questions about traveling not only in the so-called United States, but all over the world, you need to tune into that show and ask them your questions. They will give you the updated and latest information on travel all across, basically all across the known world. They have that information. What's good, what's not good. For example, the situation going on in Cancun. If you were thinking of going down into Cancun, you might want to put the brakes on that one because of what is going on in terms of people getting killed. The gangs and so forth are horrendous. And, if you've ever been to Cancun, and I have, it is a beautiful place, and they want that money coming in there. So they're having a struggle trying to keep those gangs out of there and to make your stay safe as possible. Don't go in the town of Cancun itself unless you know somebody. But in the resort area, it is just as pristine as it could be. So you might want to check that out. But before you take that trip or any other trip, not only there but all around the world, check it out on Your Time to Travel. That program is exclusive to TalkTameItRadio.com. As a matter of fact, you can go to the TalkTameItRadio.com homepage for all the listings of all the shows that you'd like to pick out and check it on out. That comes from radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby, the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We are Speaking of intelligent resistance, the phone lines are open. So caller that just called, call back. We missed that particular call, but call back. You will. There you go. There you go. There you go. And then we'll try to get you on. Intelligent resistance, which the brother wanted to know about a codified response to that, and Mr. Fuller just gave that. But again, you can go also off topic if you'd like and discuss whatever you'd like to discuss. Okay, let's do this one. Okay, caller, you are now on Mr. Fuller. What is your question, please?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. This is Reggie from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
Mr. Fuller, I'm not sure if you answered the question completely last week when I called in, but what is your definition of maintaining cooperating?
Well, about the same thing. It's well, it depends on perspective too. The white supremacists are maintaining white supremacy, and the victims cooperate with that maintenance, and the white supremacists themselves cooperate with themselves to maintain the system. See, they put the system in place, and then everybody, and it's a prison system, and it has turned out to be the most powerful system for imprisoning people that was ever thought up in the minds of people in recorded history. That's what the evidence shows. There's nothing, no prison system more powerful than the prison system, the world prison system, called the system of white supremacy. It's the prison system. So they just maintain the prison. And you cooperate, everybody cooperates with whatever is already in place. So that's the prisoners. They're cooperating with the running of the system, because we're all born, if you're a person of color, you're born in the system of white supremacy if you're on the planet now. All right? The people who were originally in prison, they were originally in prison. They weren't in prison prior to being put in prison. But everybody who's on the planet now, who is classified as non-white, according to the white supremacists, these are their prisoners. That includes me and anybody with color in his or her skin. And we're prisoners of the system of white supremacy. That's a prison system. And you cooperate with that system simply by being in prison. There's no way around it. But you try to find out ways to non-cooperate as best you can for your own comfort, but with the ultimate goal of eliminating the prison system altogether and replacing it with a system of justice, because the system of white supremacy is a system of non-justice. So we're in a world prison of non-justice. Nothing in any area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, or war is the way that it should be for anybody in a system that never should have been set up in the first place, because it's set up to do what? Dominate and mistreat people.
Yeah, mistreat people.
Based on color.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody who's in this system, or everybody on the planet, is directly, indirectly helping that system along, because it's the only system in place. There is no other system of government on the planet. It's the dominant system of government. Now, there are so-called governments that appear to be governments, and we're all governing something. Everybody governs something. You govern, if you're having a cup of tea this morning, you are governing that cup of tea. You do have some power, but it's within the system of racism. They have the top power, you might say the most powerful power. And because many people will say that, oh yeah, there are all kind of governments. Well, what's he talking about? I mean, there's governments, there are thousands of governments. Sure, if you look at it that way, every person is a government.
Yes.
You govern yourself. I mean, you wouldn't, somewhat. You walk across a room, that's governance. That's That's an act of government.
Yes.
You're a government. If you just walk across the room, get up out of one chair and walk to another, you have that freedom of government.
Yeah, I heard that term, govern yourselves accordingly.
Yes, right. I mean, but that's small government.
Yes, yes.
Big government is the system of white supremacy.
Okay.
There's no government bigger.
Okay. Last week, brother wrote in about what the Chinese are doing in Africa, $60 billion. Anyway, there was quite a few responses to that and to your response, Mr. Fuller. And here's one that comes from Negro Off Your Knees. Says this, Mr. Fuller, you say that it's the system, white supremacy, that allows the Chinese to control Africa. You say that they're equal prisoners of war in the system of white supremacy as well. Well, then please explain, Mr. Fuller, how it's the case that most of the clothing, seafood, accessories were either made, produced, or processed in China versus, say, Kenya, South Africa, Zaire, or the Sudan. Why isn't, or has it never been the case that an African nation has the largest or second largest economy on the planet? Or better yet, why has the white supremacists allowed the so-called yellow race to compete with them, in some cases exceed their success? Do the white supremacists give the Chinese that 66 billion or billion, well, I guess he meant billion, to give the Africans? Finally, does any of this make any real logical sense in that the 21st century? Because to me, the most of the listeners here, it doesn't. And I'm saying this as someone who understands the system after years of reading your text, Mr. Fuller, and listening to your lectures. I think your premise is one from the 1940s through 60s, when much of the non-white world was under white supremacist imperialistic rule. Things have shifted a bit, with white supremacy still dominates, but in a different way from them. And lastly, to all regular callers, listeners, send your donations, because it was all of us that begged for the second hour. I have sent, there's 2 checks so far, and we need more of the listeners to step up. I didn't read that last part, but thank you for that. Mr. Fuller, what say you concerning that? You know, are the white supremacists sponsoring the Chinese, the so-called Chinese?
We're getting a lot of interference here. I don't know if you hear it or not.
No, I don't hear any interference on this.
You're getting it.
Okay.
I hear 2 voices.
Okay. We only hear my voice and yours. We're working. Okay, you're working. Okay. For what you did here, can you explain that he wanted to know? Can you explain why the Chinese are allowed to do that when the products?
I can, but you got to tune out that other voice. You got to find out what that voice is that's on your line.
Okay, they're working on that right now as we speak. As we speak right now. Okay, now can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you clearly now. I don't hear that voice now, but I was hearing it the whole time you were talking.
Okay. For what you heard about the Chinese going into Africa and giving them those $60 billion and all that kind of stuff, the person that wanted to know, why can't the Kenyans or the Zaires or the South Africans do that? What's going on here?
The system of white supremacy operates just that way. There's always been. They'll let one tribe. I mean, it's not just done on a large scale. This is a large-scale operation where the Chinese, because in the last 20 or 30 years, the people who are called Chinese, the people who are listed as non-white, have been given the ability, allowed the ability by the white supremacists, either directly or indirectly, to industrialize. This has happened before in Japan many years ago. Japan was not an industrialized area. It was just a little island with people still using swords, as weapons and whatnot, and they weren't a real threat to the system of white supremacy. That's why the white supremacists were able to go into Japan and tell them, among the people who call themselves Japanese, rather, and tell them, you will industrialize because I need an industrial foothold in this place called Asia, and you're going to be it. And then I will use you to keep everything stabilized in this area of the world. That seems to have been the premise. I think history will bear me out on that. Give or take a few adjustments. But basically that's what happened. And then they had a falling out because the people who were given the industrial capabilities that they had gotten from, directly or indirectly, from the white supremacists, said, well, but yeah, you industrialized us, but we're not really getting a whole lot out of it. And so then there was conflict about that. Okay? It's just like the white supremacists going into a prison cell and say, I'm going to give you a whole lot more than what I give the rest of the prisoners. And because I'm going to use you to stabilize this entire cell block. I mean, maybe one or two of you are my chosen here. I'm going to use you to stabilize this area, but for my sake, I'm going to use you to be a sort of a hammer to keep everything, or a centerpiece to keep everything in flux the way I want it in this particular area. Okay? Now, it could be that they are doing the same thing with the people who are called Chinese here in 2018, but on a much larger scale, because now what is happening? People are becoming more and more intelligent. I mean, the dark-skinned people of the world, on account of what? The inventions that have come about in the system of white supremacy. Inventions like better communications. Better communications always makes people more intelligent because they're in contact with people more than they ever have been in previous history.
Okay.
So the white supremacists understand all this. So in a capsule, in answer to the question, all of the non-white people have a tendency to fight each other, just like all the Indian tribes. That's how they were all conquered. They were busy fighting each other. They were spending full time when they weren't just taking care of their everyday hunting and fishing and things like that. They were in their own folklore. They say we were warriors. They did war dances all the time.
Yes.
The white supremacists looked at that and they said, hey, we can take advantage of these people real easy. Because they always going around in the northwestern hemisphere calling themselves Pawnees and Creeks, Cherokees, and Algonquins, and they got all kinds of tribes.
Okay, well, I got to hold. Okay, I have to hold it there. The question was, can you explain what intelligent resistance is?
It's nothing but using your intelligence to resist. That's all. Intelligence, meaning your brain. It's not going about doing things just any kind of old way. I mean, there's a scientific way for doing... Hello?
Yes, still here.
There's a scientific way of doing everything. Scientific meaning where you get the best result. That's all intelligence resistance is. There's nothing mysterious about it. It's just a term. It's just a word. And what does those two words mean? Intelligence resistance. It means going about resisting the system of white supremacy in the best possible way that can be done. This is what you should try to achieve, whether you're trying to replace the system of white supremacy with justice, or if you're changing the tire on a car. You're using intelligence to resist the fact that the tire needs changing. All right? The tire needs changing because something is incorrect with the tire, like the tire is flat. All right? So you repair the tire, take it off, or whatever you have to do, or leave it on if you can do it in a more efficient manner that way. Always try to do it in the most efficient manner. That's where the intelligence is.
That's
all it means.
Would that be where a code would be necessary? You would have to have.
That's right. Yes, if you have a code for something, I've heard about some things happening recently because there were fires, some large fires that are taking place.
Yes.
Saw it on television the other day, and the fire people said, "Well, yes, naturally there was going to be a fire because the electrical system in this building was not up to code." Also, I saw another one where a building was sinking into the ground.
Yes.
Parts of the building.
Yes.
And they said, "Oh, well, we didn't follow the code for building a foundation in this section of the building.
Yes.
So let's get back to the code and bring this up to code specifications, and the whole building won't fall down because we have done everything according to the way you have to do it in this type of ground."
Okay.
The ground is soft, so you have to use materials, and you have to use a support system that's much different from the support systems that we have used probably in other places. So this building has to be brought up to code.
Mm-hmm.
This foundation has to be brought up to the codified way of having a foundation in this type of surface.
So every
type of ground.
Mm-hmm. So every problem that we encounter, there has to be a logical, codified way to respond to that problem. And you start off by asking questions. Would that be correct?
That is the correct way to do it. Questions and answers. Get all of the answers that you need in order to answer a question of how best to put this building up, where to put it. I mean, how tall is it going to be?
Yes, sir.
Will the ground stand the weight that this building will have?
Yes.
This all has to be codified. Codification, intelligence, resistance, it's just a way of going about doing things in the best possible manner.
Oh, righty.
If you want to put it in simple language.
Yeah, simple.
The
Okay.
best possible manner of doing and saying everything.
Okay. From the Gmails, good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. About that movie list, Mr. Fuller, I have a more recent series, for the listeners, that scared me motionless when I realized that it's about white supremacy and its future plans. The very controversial series called The Handmaid's Tale has disturbing scenes of mistreatment in it. Even though its plot takes place in a supposed post-racial world, all of what is happening in it is also really happening in the real world and representative of what's happening in the real world of people of color. Those colonies that they send offenders off to in the series represent the real colonies of the white man on this planet. People with color in the skin living in, all of them are heading to conditions in the colonies portrayed in that series. The conditions of the handmaids in it is what the white supremacists are aiming for when it comes to their future reign of terror over non-white peoples on this planet. The author, Margaret Atwood, tries to hide it, but the white feminist circles that she frequented, i.e. the suffragists, etc., forms part of the overall practicing ranks of the global white supremacist enslaver cult. Mr. Fuller, your thoughts on that?
I haven't heard about the movie or the book or the script or anything like that, but what's the name of it?
The name of it, wait a minute, because it's small here. It's called The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's
Tale?
The Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
T-A-L-E.
That's correct.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I haven't heard of it, but always look for the lessons in anything that you're looking at. And it's kind of difficult to make movies that's got a lot of lessons in them. I mean, particularly nowadays, because the most of what you call the blockbuster movies are really for people to be thrilled by this spectacular way that the movie is made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, explosions and all like that.
Special effects. And
but I say that some of the best movies are the movies that have lessons. And movies that have lessons in each scene, sometimes you have to kind of really look for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they'll just, pass by you. But try to find lessons in every movie that you look at. And look at the movies that have lessons. And sometimes people have asked me, well, why would you look at the same movie over and over again, Fuller? I say it's like reading the same book over and over again. I say you keep looking for lessons. The lessons that you missed the first time. Or lessons that reinforce whatever it is that you're thinking now. Or that eliminates some of the things that you're thinking now, because it gives you another perspective.
Yes, sir.
So that should be the purpose for anything, whether it's a movie or a book, from now on, that any person of color, when you look at a movie, if that movie doesn't have some lessons in it that you can use, then that movie shouldn't be on your list.
Okay. Now, with that being said, have you seen or heard anything about the movie Black Panther? And if you have, what lessons could be gleaned from that particular movie? Everybody's been talking about it. Everybody's doing the Wakanda thing. Have you seen or heard anything about that?
I have heard about the movie, and I have not seen it. There's several movies I've heard about that I have not seen. Get Out and The Black Klansman. But I'm saying, when you look at any of these movies, particularly movies that include black people, look for the constructive lessons that you can get out of them. Because most movies, historically, that are made that include black people, when you look at it, the average black person that looks at it, if that movie is, to the extent that the white supremacists had anything to do with it, there will be most of the things in it, or some of the things, or a substantial number of things that will lead a black person's mind in the incorrect direction. And it will be very supportive of the system of white supremacy indirectly. I mean, a lot of the movies made in the 1970s caused black people to think in a manner that black people should be what? Thugs, gangsters.
Mm-hmm.
That was the basic lesson of the movies, and you had many millions of black people worldwide who came out of a movie theater, and whether they knew it or not, what they really wanted to be more than anything else ever was a gangster, a thug, somebody who was going to mistreat people, somebody who was going to, what you call, dog women around, all right, and all like that. And that's what these movies were teaching.
Okay.
And that was the biggest influence. So black people who are in the movie-making business, even though you might have, to be realistic, you might have some gangsters in it. And here in 2018, they should be thinking about, do you have a constructive lesson anywhere in this movie?
Alrighty.
Do you have something that a person can go out of this movie thinking about, hey, this is something that I should do, that I never thought about doing.
Right.
That would be of constructive value.
Okay.
That'll get something done that'll be constructive for black people.
All right. Let's take this phone call. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Hi, good morning. I have a second suggestion about the economic area that Neely talked about. It's a book that was written about 250 years ago, 300 years ago, by Adam Smith. It's called The Wealth of Nations. It's about a 1,000-page book.
Did you say The Wealth of Nations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Inquiry to the Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. It was written about 250 years ago, or 300 years ago. It's about 1,000 pages long, and it goes through a lot of detail about how economics, as we know it today, had evolved over time. talks about how land usage as far as rent, as far as how to use cattle, sheep and cows and that sort of thing. Talks about fishing, fisheries and stuff like that. And
yes.
About that, because people, even though you got a ship, you still got to bring the fish to the land, and there's rent that you have to pay for that.
Okay.
So it talks about that, and it talks about the military, how that funded. It goes through a whole lot of things, the evolutionary process of economics, how money came to be used as money, as metals, coins, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And also, one more thing, he said, in the book I talked about the military thing, how the colonies started in the West Indies, and why the West Indies is called the West Indies. So you can take it, for a grain of salt, whether you believe it or not, but it does give some basis about that.
Okay.
You can also find the book in audio form on YouTube. It's about 36 hours long. It's hard to follow, but if you basically listen to that, you do get a sense of what his idea. I don't know about the listeners, but for me,
okay,
it transformed me a little bit.
All right, all right,
all
right. Thank you very much for that. We'll try to check that out, Mr. Fuller. Before we talk about your book, here is a question for you. It says this comes from Maynard. It says this: please ask Mr. Fuller, is the term intelligent resistance in the code book? Is so? If it's so, what page? If not, why is it being discussed?
Oh, it's being discussed because someone asked about it.
Exactly. Someone asked about it. So
That's it.
Yeah, but now Maynard wanted to know, is the term in the book, in the code book?
It's in there because that's where the person said they got it. I have
exactly.
I've forgotten a lot of them.
That's where the person.
And certainly, I've since I didn't put the page numbers together myself, I don't know what page a lot of my material is on. I haven't read my own book, the Revised Expanded Edition.
Yes.
It's not in the original edition.
No.
But it is in the Revised Expanded Edition and the Word Guide. So, but words are just tools. I want people to get in the habit of, don't be too much fascinated by words. Pay attention to the definitions. See, just look at the definitions. Most of the definitions of the words that I have in the Word Guide, all of them explain what the words mean when they are used by me. Now, a lot of these words will mean something else when they're used by somebody else.
That's correct.
But I have my definitions in there.
Yes.
Okay? But you can use these words. Word is nothing but a tool. So you can use a term the way that you want to use it, if it does the job that you want done. A word is nothing but a tool to do a job that needs doing.
Yes.
By whom? By the person who is trying to do the job.
That's correct.
That's any word.
Any word.
Words are not fixed in the universe like this is absolute. No, they're absolute when you make them absolute. Okay?
Okay.
That'll be your perspective.
Yeah.
And then you want to change the definition of a word, change it.
Okay. This is why it is important, listeners, that you also read the book. It's important. And Mr. Palmer, he told me I could use his name, Victor Palmer, read the book and got that term out of there, intelligent resistance. You need to read the book. You say phone lines? Okay. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, good day to you, gentlemen. I was calling in because I heard Mr. Fuller talking about, like building codes and just following codes. One thing that I definitely noticed is that, with the system of racism, white supremacy, from the way that I see it, federal law, even state law, they call it codes and statutes that they follow. And basically just showing how even under their system, they have codes that they want us to follow. But what I found interesting was that when you look it up, it's called colorable law, which is fictional law. So it's not even real. And it's actually, if you look up a colorable law, the Attorney General's office comes up and they call it a deprivation of rights under color of law, showing that they're operating under fiction. But you have to call them out on it, because if you don't, then you consent to it. So it's almost like they give you a chance to either consent to what they're doing or not consent. So I think that's where the slavery comes in as well. If you do know, then it's like you're operating under that slavery. And that was just something that I caught. And just to add something for Mr. Fuller, I did see Black Panther, and what I found interesting was here was Black Panther, where you had basically imagery of black people, in an industrial age, as you were saying before, but they brought in this CIA agent in the movie. He's like almost like the only white guy in the movie. And at first they're calling him a colonizer, everything in the book, but then he ends up almost helping to save the show. So it just shows how in a system of racism or supremacy, you can have the intention of having a movie where you're building up black people, but there has to be some white person that's a hero in the movie. So I just wanted to chime that in, for the people as well.
Okay, thank you very much for that information and update. Mr. Fuller, we're a little bit past time, but this is the time where you need to speak to your book. So go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of a basic revised expanded edition of the original 1984 edition. The original 1984 edition is also there because some people have requested that for some reason, but the revised expanded edition has material, most of the material in it that's in the original edition, plus a whole lot more. Now, a lot of people, for some reason, they like the 1984 edition. That's why it's back up there. They requested it, and so it's back there. But it's the revised expanded edition has more material in it, plus the material that is in the 1984 edition for the most part. Now, it's kind of written differently and all like that. But if you get the revised expanded edition, you will have just about everything that's in the original edition, plus a whole lot more. It's a thicker book. It covers much more material. It's more directive.
Yes.
Yes, it's a lot more material in it that gives you directions about what an individual person can do. And it does it in a more explicit form, in my opinion. However, for some reason, people, sometimes they get both, which is something I don't understand, but so be it. It's right there at producejustice.com.
Yes.
Now, in addition to that, there's an addition to, you might say, to both books. It's in the form of a compensatory codified word guide. Now, this book is just an extension of the revised expanded edition and the original edition. But most people get the package, which is the revised expanded edition and the word guide, because there is no word guide in the original revised expanded edition. But go to producejustice.com, and the material in it is directed to the individual person, not the organizations. Organizations can use it, but you are not supposed to try to form an organization out of the book. It defeats the purpose. It's called the United Independent System, where the individual person becomes an organization. Because the concept is, if you solve the problems of each individual person, you solve the problems of all persons. And the concept also includes the theory that the white supremacists can deal with so-called black organizations, for example. They know how to crush them, because most organizations have a leader. So all they have to do is just keep the leader corralled or kill him or her. They can do that easily, okay? or they fence them off into that little box called the organization. Most organizations have names. But when you organize the individual person so that the person becomes an organization within him or herself, then the racists cannot defeat that without defeating every person of color on the planet.
All right.
Because that person, him or herself, by following a counter-racist code, is an organization. Because that's all an organization does, follow a code. So when you organize each person so that that person is complete within him or herself, without having to look around and see what everybody else is doing, that person has a code. That person is an organization within him or herself. That's the concept.
Yes.
And the white supremacists will not be able to deal with that as far as the intelligence that we have now here on the planet.
Great. Okay. That to me, that sounds
Go to producejustice.com.
And all that is on there. Yeah. Okay. That very good. Sharnice, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, had a from the Gmails had a good. Right, I'm gonna read it. She says, "Good morning, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby. A movie that I believe could help others understand the system of racism, white supremacy, is called The Edge. It really shows the impotency of black males in the system, in my opinion." And I bring that out, and very good question, because in our morning discussion that was brought out, that last term, the impotency of black males in the system. Have you heard of that movie, Mr. Fuller, The Edge?
I haven't heard of it, but everything that you're looking at shows how impotent black people are in the system of white supremacy, because that's what white supremacy means. It means we're impotent. We're prisoners of war. We were born in prison. That's a simple way and a truthful way of looking at it. We're born in prison. We've never been outside the prison. There's no such thing as being outside the prison. There's no place you can go in the known universe where you will be outside of a prison, and the name of that prison is the system of white supremacy. They are supreme over all people of color, black, brown, red, yellow, tan, beige, any people of color. The white supremacists have total supremacy over each and every collective and each and every individual. Even when it appears that they don't have it, they have it. Why? Because they have the ability to kill anybody
at any time
that they don't like,
right? That
they think ought to be dead.
Mm-hmm.
They have this instant ability to do that.
Okay.
Even when they pretend that they don't have it.
All right.
That's a part of their power.
We got to hold it right there, and we'll pick it up on the other side. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, and radio the way it should be heard. Thank you, listeners, for the pleasure of your time. You don't have to do this, but thank you. Thank you for all your calls. Thank you for all your letters. Stay tuned for the second hour of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., heard here exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. That is radio the way it should be heard.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Okay. TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go on the world's greatest radio. You now are in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And this is radio the way it should be heard. Our on topic today is intelligent resistance. If you missed any of the first hour, it is now available, or it is available on TalkTainmentRadio.com. Listen live, although the listen live part is what's going on right now, but it will be up at 10 p.m. tonight where you can listen to it and get a better understanding of intelligent resistance. Before we go to the phone lines, and you can call in, by the way, at 1-877-932-9766. Mr. Fuller was discussing the black male impotency. A caller called in and suggested a movie called The Edge, and Mr. Fuller was addressing that. We're going to go back to that, but first, let's get this call going on. Okay, caller, go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question? I can't hear you, caller.
Hello, can you hear me?
Okay, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yes, I was calling. I actually have two questions. The first one is, it seems as though the format may have changed, at least to me anyway, because normally when I tune into the program, I set my clock to it early, and something like 8:55. I'm in Miami, Florida, so Mr. Fuller and I are on the same clock time. And normally what it is, it's a nice sounding lady who's talking about oils. It used to be anyway. And then it would go to Mr. Fuller's program at 9 a.m. But now when I turn the program on, Mr. Fuller is already on even before 9 a.m. So I was just trying to figure out on what are the changes, or am I incorrect on that?
No, it's still 9 o'clock. Mr. Fuller, as a matter of fact, Mr. Fuller calls in before 9 and waits until we cue him in. So I don't know what's going on with that, but 9 a.m. is when the program starts. When the program starts.
Okay, now I have a question that's related to why Mr. Fuller is on the program. To Mr. Fuller, I hear, and probably you also hear, non-white people who are racially classified as non-white black stating that the white male by the name of Donald Trump is dumb, stupid, that sort of thing. Do you see any constructive thought and process in calling a white person that's in a position of authority dumb and stupid? And that's my question.
Okay. Ms. Fuller?
No. I don't see where that helps at all. I mean, if it does, somebody has to point it out to me. If I call, if I call Mr. Donald Trump dumb and stupid, what effect does that have? What does that do for me, other than make me, you might say, feel good, if that's what I'm seeking to do? It all comes down to, what is it I'm trying to do? Am I trying to make myself feel good? Well, that might make me feel good. Everybody likes to, what you call, quote, unquote, feel good. But counter-racist codification is scientific. It's about solving problems. So if I feel good, and then that feeling good helps me to solve a problem, which is primarily the race problem, then put it to work. But I guess you have to feel good in order to do constructive work, maybe. Or you can quote unquote, feel bad and still do constructive work. But if you can feel good and do constructive work, that's probably a plus. And if you can feel good by calling President Trump a lot of names and make yourself feel better because you called him some names, well, maybe that works. But the code says you don't call anybody by any name publicly except the name that person wants to be called. I wouldn't call President Trump stupid, all right? Because in order to do what? I mean, what would I gain from that? But like I said, it might make me feel better once I do it. Lots of black people call names all day long. We call lots of people names. We got all kind of names to call people. In fact, that term MF is associated with black people all the way. I mean, more than any other term. Black males in particular and some black females. We use that term to describe everything. Describe the sky, describe a cloud, describe the bus when it's late, describe the people on the bus. I mean, that's the way we are.
Yes,
in the Northwestern Hemisphere.
Okay.
And I guess it makes us feel better.
Okay.
But I don't know about what it does in making us better people.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mr. Fuller. With that being said, and you always said that to ask questions, what would be, using compensatory logic, what would be the constructive result of calling the president out of his name, or dumb as the caller suggests? What would be the constructive result of that?
Well, like I said, it might help some people to feel better.
Help them do what?
And then I don't know, the person who says that they felt better when they did it, that's the person who would have to describe, now that you feel better, after having then about 15 or 20 or 30 or maybe 200 favorite names that you have come up with, and you say you feel better. Now that you feel better, what does that mean functionally?
You're still in the question
mode. What is going
mode.
to change? That would be my question.
Okay.
I mean, and the person could tell me. They'd say, well, before I did that, I felt bad. Now that I've done that, I feel good. And now that I feel good, all of a sudden, I know what to do.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right, because it all comes down to not how you feel, but what you do.
Okay, got it.
Okay, not how you feel, but what you do as a result of how you feel.
Okay.
That is the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
That's the thing for everybody to watch for.
Okay. Now, this lady who wrote in about the suggestion about the movie called The Edge, and she said that it really shows the impotency of black males in the system of racism, which is white supremacy. Let me ask you this. Now, I would say this. People saw there were images of Mr. William Cosby, or Bill Cosby, being in handcuffs and shuffled off to prison, wherever he's gone. Immediately, he didn't even have a chance to go home after the decision dropped. Okay, but then a photograph was shown of at least 20 well-known sexual predators, Mr. Fuller, that had done the same thing, or even similar, or even worse than what Mr. Cosby had done, and yet they are free and walking about whatever their situation is. I'm not going to mention the name. You've seen them in the news. These images, does this, in your opinion, if you have seen some of these or even heard of some of these people and the images that are left, particularly on the television screen, does that show the impotency of the black male?
Sure. Everything shows it because it's the truth anyway. The black male person in the system of white supremacy has no power. That's what white supremacy means. It doesn't make any difference how much money he has how much money she has. I mean, it's a black female. Any person of color. Zero power is what we have, except the power to kill somebody on an individual level, but then you pay the price for that in the prison system called the system of white supremacy. It means you're rendered powerless, less power than the white supremacists.
Yes.
You always have that.
Okay.
Money won't do it for you.
Okay.
When the white supremacists, because why? The white supremacists decide which black person will have money and which black person will not have it, and the time and place. The white supremacists, money has a source.
Yes.
Money has a value. The white supremacists put the value on all money. They are the ones who produce the money. Okay. Most of the times, the money that is most important have pictures of some white supremacists on the money.
Yes.
And they have proven that they were white supremacists because some of them were in the northwestern hemisphere were slave owners. I mean, which they bragged about, owning slaves. And so then the slave gets his hands on that money and say, this is something that I worship. Money is where it's at, man. I mean, I got plenty of it. I mean, yes. And the person who values that money, who puts the value on the money, because money has no value until the white supremacist says that it has.
The assigned value.
Right, it's just a whole bunch of paper, or it's diamonds, or it's gold. Gold has no value except maybe to put in your teeth or something like that, or you're going to use it for some purpose that is practical, other than just saying that the gold is worth such and such a thing.
Yes, sir.
It's the white supremacists who say what that gold is worth.
Mm-hmm.
If the white supremacists say that gold has no value as of 12 o'clock today, it no longer has any value, even though people have been killing people to try to get gold all down through the ages. If the white supremacists announce that starting with today, gold has no value at all, you better believe gold will have no value at all. Everybody who has gold stored up somewhere and thought that they had something valuable, if the white supremacists say it's no longer valuable, then silver is going to be the thing, all right? Then you better rush out and get yourself some silver, because that gold is of no value. Why? Because the white supremacists said so.
Yes. Wow. Okay. To the caller that had called in before that said he couldn't hear or was having difficulties, well, most of us who listen to or involved with this program know that there are other outside forces in play that do not want the message that Mr. Fuller gives out, or suggestions that he gives out. So occasionally we're going to have something. But Mr. Fuller's program airs live at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Wednesdays. He doesn't start before that. That could be a previous program that's finishing its cycle. I understand that there's going to be some changes made, but there will be no changes to what Mr. Fuller is doing from 9 a.m. until 11 a.m. Eastern time. That's going to stay the same. So the guy I mentioned he has his timer set for that. Well, you can set your timer on that 9 until 11. Mr. Fuller is live. That's live programming, no replay or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. Particularly this week, I understand we're going to change our clocks back, so don't get all messed up like that every year. Somebody gets messed up on that. But that's what we want to do, and we are still speaking of intelligent resistance. That term is in the book. A caller or somebody wrote in and wanted to know, if that was a term in the book. Mr. Victor Palmer had brought the use of that in, and this is our second discussion on intelligent resistance. And Mr. Fuller has been making suggestions as to what to do into that, and understanding that men has to have a code. Okay, let's do this. Let's go to the phone lines. Okay, caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller, caller. No, you need to speak up a little bit. I can't hear you. Can you hear him, Mr. Fuller?
I can hear him.
Okay.
1 second.
All righty.
Better now?
Okay, go ahead. Mr. Fuller, can you hear him now?
I can hear him.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Okay. How you doing, Mr. Fuller? I called last week. I have another question for you. Me and my mom were having a conversation yesterday, and I told her, I said, if you think about it, if black people stopped their foolishness, we got our act together, and we did what we needed to do, and, you know, things like that, do you think that the white supremacists would be jealous? Like they, for example, when you look into history, you hear about them bombing cities and stuff like that. So we're kind of in a bad situation because even if we did stop the madness that we're doing, I could see them being real jealous. What do you think about that?
Well, the white supremacists do not want the non-white people of the planet to do anything of constructive value. They are in charge of everything that's supposed to be constructive. That's the way they look at the entire world. Why? Because it keeps the power with them. When people do stupid things, which black people are taught to worship doing stupid things, all right, we are actually taught to find something stupid to do and do it, and do as much of it as we possibly can, all right? Because that's supposed to be the definition of a black person. Stupidity. Glorified, glamorized stupidity. Just anything stupid. Call the black person in and say, hey, this is your department. Something stupid. Okay? And we're supposed to leave with armloads of stupidity to spread around other black people and do just as many stupid things as we can possibly think of doing. And many of us have embraced stupidity as being the best way to exist on this planet called Earth. Just find something stupid to do and do as much of it as you possibly can, okay? And call it living. Call it fun. Call it black culture, which black culture now consists of tons of stupid things.
Yes, sir.
All right? What we brag about is being black culture. You back up off of it and look what other people do that's called progress. And what we're doing is in the stupid category. But we'll call it progress. We'll say this is progressive. I mean, because it's nice and stupid. That fits black people. I mean, you know, just a list of things. Just look at all the things that black people brag about, okay, and whatnot. And just see how many of them are of any real constructive value. That's why black people a lot of times say that the people come here in the northwestern hemisphere, we say that people come here from other places, and a lot of them look like us, but they don't want to have anything to do with us. They don't, you know, they treat us with disrespect. Well, look at us. Look at us. Are we the people that everybody in the world should be copying? If you're going to get things done that make sense, are we, black people in the shape that we're in now, are we the people that everybody in the world should be looking to for leadership? To copy. Copy whatever you see black people doing, copy that. If people came here from another planet, just have us look at ourselves and say, are we the people that should be copied? And the world would be exactly the way that it ought to be if everybody copied everything that we do. Not the things that we say we should be doing, but the things that we actually do among ourselves.
Okay.
If everybody dropped what they're doing and did what black people do each and every day, would the world be a better place?
Would it be? Okay.
The answer, according to the code, is absolutely not.
Okay. Before I take this call, I have to do this. TalkTainMentRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one that I am going to share with you, and it's a good show, and it's called Wiggins World. Now, I've met Stacy Wiggins, and the brother just brings it live, instructs you on various forms of relaxation or how to blend in with what's going on in the world, in your environment, through the use of exercise, meditation, and so forth. All types of things that have to do with holistic wellness. In fact, he and Libby and myself have gotten together and had this discussion. But you want to make sure that if you're having stress problems or any type of thing like that, tune into Wiggins World, and Stacy will break it down, help identify what is, and can possibly offer you some suggestions as to holistic healing. His program and all the programs that are on TalkTameRadio.com, just go to the homepage, look it up. It's there. Get the information, and then check it out. Don't just hear it. Check it out. Even the book that Mr. Fuller has, and the book that's been going on now, Sex Code War. Don't just talk about it. Do something about it. Read. Understand it. Get the information and apply compensatory logic to that. Can you do that? Don't just talk about it. Do something about that. All that from TalkTameRadio.com, radio the way it should be heard. I am Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We're talking about intelligent resistance. You have to have a code. If you missed the first hour, make sure that you get the second hour. Okay, let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, Mr. Fuller. This is Brother Muko from Baltimore.
Hey, Brother Muko. Yes, sir.
Constructive action discussions here. We'll be doing this Saturday coming up, but not next Saturday because I'll be in New York at the filming of Race War with Jason Black. But this is my question for you, Mr. Fuller. Can you please elaborate for my care unit in Baltimore and all around the world how being serious about silliness kills us as non-white people in the system of racism, white supremacy?
About how what now?
How being serious about silliness kills us in this system of racism, white supremacy. Being serious about silly stuff and being silly about serious stuff.
Oh, yes. Black people have been trained. We have been trained to be serious about everything that's silly.
That's right.
And we have been trained to be silly about everything that is serious. And we're that way in our conversations. If it's something serious, we'll make it silly. We're not satisfied until we make it silly. We're going to have, just have the silliness take over anything that's serious, okay? And if it's something that is serious, we're going to see to it that we make it into something that is silly. We do just the reverse from what everybody with any bit of what you might call intelligent intent is trying to do. Squirrels are always trying to do something that solves problems. Black people have been trained to make problems and to giggle about it. Make a problem and really, hey, this is funny because we have made a problem. And that includes right up to gang banging and all like that. That's silly.
Yes.
ILLY. Gang banging, by definition, is silly stuff. You don't get paid for that. You don't get anything constructive out of it. All you get is just a whole bunch of dead bodies lying around and a whole bunch of weary-looking black people in front of funerals and ragged dolls hanging on a fence.
Yeah, teddy bears.
That's all that comes out of that. It's nothing constructive at all.
Yes.
But tribes, not only just in the northwestern hemisphere, but all over the world, black people engage in that silly nonsense. Nonsense is silly and silly is nonsense. But just anything that's non-constructive, we just embrace it. Go looking for it.
Because we've been taught that.
If it's not there, then, hey, we got to make it. We got to make this happen.
Wow.
This don't. We go into a situation and we say, oh, man, this is too clean. The streets are clean and everything is all pretty and whatnot. Oh, hey, if it's black, it's supposed to be ugly. Okay? Everything is supposed to be ugly. And the ugliest things is supposed to be us and the way we act and talk. Let's get some ugly talk around here. I mean, that's more like home, you know. If it ain't a lot of ugly talk, something putting somebody down, something saying derogatory, I mean, breaking a window, just anything like that, that's us. That's black culture at its best. And we want more of it. And if you take it away from us, you are insulting black people. That's what black culture has become. Truth be told. So we need a code that just eliminates all of that, every bit of it. Why? Because it is worthless.
Yes.
It is not constructive. We need to get into a constructive mode about every move that we make, and that includes everything that we say. It needs to be codified.
Yes.
To have a constructive effect, and everything that we do.
Yes, sir.
Is codified to have a constructive effect. Everything, without exception.
Okay. Brother Muko, thank you so much for your call. Thank you so much. And thank you for the work you're doing in Baltimore. Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely, Mr. Bobby. And Mr. Bobby, I'm going to have a few more shirts sent to you and Brother Tramp.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All righty. Yeah, Brother Muko calls in and gives us up the latest information. Good stuff going down there in Baltimore, trying to produce justice. Mr. Fuller, you somebody wrote in about the use of the word MF and why it is or seems to be so powerful. In the remaining a couple of minutes before we go to the break, can you explain why that particular word is so seems to be so powerful among black folk?
Well, I haven't done any research on it. I just know that I first started hearing it when I was in the military, and I noticed that black people used it more than the white people. So I see white people cringe sometimes when the word is used, and maybe that's why black people were using it. I don't know. I don't know how that caught on and got to be the standard bearer for black language. I mean, that's mostly associated with black people. I mean, that particular term, everything is an MF.
That the white man taught us?
Oh, we walk down the street and we say MF. We're talking on an iPad. MF this and MF that.
Oh, look at that black MF.
Yeah, look at that. Yeah, look. Yeah, the trees are MFs.
Yeah.
The clouds are MFs. The bus is coming down the street. That MF is late. All right, and that driver, I mean, who is a black female, looked just like my mother.
Whoa.
She's an MF.
Whoa.
All right? That's the way we talk. And we think that this is wonderful. This is beautiful. This adds to us.
That's silly.
I mean, you know, now I'm becoming stronger. I mean, you know, I'm an example for the entire world. Everybody stop what you're doing and turn around and look at me. I got about 50 different MFs for everybody. And I got some to give away. I mean, I got some to spare. I keep a bunch of them for myself. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
That's the black male more than anybody, and a growing number of black females.
Yeah, I gotta leave it there. And we have a brother that writes to us regularly, named Brother Sepifalo, if I pronounce it right, which I probably didn't. But anyway, this is what he said. He said, Neely Fuller, Mr. Neely Fuller, I haven't traveled the whole of Africa, but I'd say that in Africa, probably the largest number of white people is in South Africa. Blacks all over Africa come to South Africa because we have white people. Even though we have white people, I've realized that the majority of black people in South Africa have not had real contact with white people. Very few black people in South Africa live or school with white people. As a result, black people believe about white people what they have been taught or what the whites portray in public. But when I was in high school, a white female teacher of mine told me, quote, never to take white people at face value. End of quote. I see most of the blacks who were able to live in the same areas as whites have a tendency to think that they're white And black people who have never had contact with white people are petrified of them. We never came out of our apartheid. When black people work hard and obtain money to be able to buy houses in the white neighborhoods, the whites just leave. The whites do not seem to be interested in living side to side with black people. When we want to correct the injustices, i.e. Land exploration, free education, nationalizing the bank, the white supremacists say that we are being racist. We're not even saying that they should leave Africa. We're saying let us share. Please, let us all share in the wealth of this land. Seems like they, the racist white supremacists, are not interested in justice. Mr. Fuller, my question to you, do you see this as unusual?
No, that's business as usual. The system of white supremacy is worldwide, and it never stopped. All they did is just refined it in South Africa. They say, hey, and they just like in the Northwestern Hemisphere, they'll say, we'll give a black person a title. You'll have a title, but we'll still be in control. Mm-hmm. In fact, you can be president. Okay, you can strut around, you can ride around in a limousine all you want to. We got plenty of limousines. We got limousines, to spare for everybody. We don't care anything about limousines. We can have millions of them. We can have everybody in a limousine if we wanted to, all right? But give that black person a limousine, give them a suit and a tie. In fact, give them 2,000 suits and ties. We don't care. We got plenty of them. We got clothes to burn, okay? All right, they don't know that, but we do. We have everything. There's nothing we don't have. Plenty of. Plenty for everybody. But we control everything, and we control all people of color 24 hours a day, even when they don't know they are being controlled. And let's keep it that way. It's called what? In capital letters. The system of white supremacy. It's the most powerful, most well thought out government and religion that has ever been produced in the minds of the people of this entire planet. Yes. Nothing has been greater than the system of white supremacy in every area of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. The white supremacists control it all when it comes to people who are classified as non-whites. And that includes everything that goes on in what we call the nation of South Africa.
Okay.
Which really doesn't exist. What you have in what they call South Africa is just white supremacy, like you have everywhere on the planet.
Okay.
There's one government on the planet, and that's the name of it, the system of white supremacy.
All righty. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please, with your call.
Good morning. This is James calling from North Carolina.
Yes, James.
Mr. Fuller, the United States government is currently demanding the non-white people of North Korea to bring its nuclear arms program to an immediate end. The U.S. government states that if North Korea develops a full-blown nuclear arms arsenal, that act will be perceived as a threat to the free world. With this in mind, the U.S., Russia, and some other countries where the vast majority of people are classified as white already have full-blown nuclear arms program, but are not expressing any interest in denuclearizing their militaries. What do you think the reason for that is?
To the extent that the white supremacists have anything to do with it, the reasons are to make the system of white supremacy stronger. And I'd like to say this within the context of the use of words. There's no such thing as the United States of America government in the system of white supremacy. That's just a title of something that everybody should want to be. Everybody should want to be a member of the United States of America. Everybody should want to be an African, and everybody should want to be an Asian. Why? Because Americans, Africans, and Asians, by definition, mean people who practice justice. There's no point in being an African if you don't practice justice. There's no point in being an Asian if you don't practice justice. And there's no point in being an American if you don't practice justice. But the fact is, and the truth is, none of these people exist because nobody practices justice. It's impossible for anybody to practice justice in a system of white supremacy. That's the only government. I just said that because the use of words are very important. There's no such thing as the United States of America in the system of white supremacy. That's just a title that applies to people who want to do the correct thing. But it doesn't exist because you cannot have justice and a system of white supremacy on the same planet at the same time.
It doesn't exist.
It is absolutely impossible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hello, sir. I follow your logic.
Right. So in answer to that question,
I think you're making logical sense. However, why do you think the people who actually are in control of the supreme government call the United States the United States if there is no such thing as the United States of America? What will be their reason for doing that?
The reason for white supremacists for doing anything is to do what? Make the system of white supremacy stronger. I don't care what they're doing. They don't do anything to make themselves weaker, even when they, like people who are really smart. A real smart prize fighter, I'll make this suggestion. A real smart fighter in a ring, or a football player,
yes,
always pulls things every now and then, not always, but every now and then, they do what? They make you think that they're weak when they're strong.
Yes.
All right? I mean, a boxer does that. I mean, he will drop that left arm thinking that it's out of order, that you hit him on the shoulder and that left arm is no good no more. And then you get what they call what? A sucker punch. Okay? The white supremacists are the same way.
Yeah.
See what I mean? They do this. They know how to appear weak. See, they're the greatest actors in the world. Woo. Actors and actresses. They know how to act. When they talk to a black person, they know how to come across as being extremely strong and belligerent. Or they know how to sound very, very weak and scared. And they know how to act like they are very loving. I mean, very enduring. Boy, I mean, bring tears to your eyes. They can do all of that. And they teach some of us to do it.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
They know. They are experts at everything that has to do with controlling the minds and the actions of people.
Master teachers, yes. Mr. Fuller, may I make a comment before we go to your book? Mr. Fuller.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, may I make a comment before?
Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I like that you just made that reference to football because I was just thinking it and wrote a few points down. You said how they do that. I call that deception, or in football, they run counter plays, counter to the way that they want you to think things are going. They go the opposite way. And to me, it brought a clarity to the counter-racist code. We have to counter what they've done in order to bring forth justice. And I just thought that what you just said, making a football analogy, was just spot on.
Well, lots of people in the Northwestern Hemisphere know a little bit about football. A lot of black people do. So sometimes you have to make these analogies in that way. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something. See, we understand that. When it comes to football, we don't understand it when it comes to racism.
Oh, man, say it. Yeah.
That's all you have to do is just apply the same thing.
Right.
Okay? You look like you're going to make an onside kick when you ain't going to make one at all.
Right.
You're going to pick up that ball and run down the field.
That's right.
All right? They thought you were going to make an onside kick. You're gone. All right?
Right.
Before anybody knows what happens, you're in the end zone, and they're saying, what? We just lost the Super Bowl. Okay? I mean,
right.
The white supremacists are the experts at that.
The experts. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Fuller, this is the time that we designate for your publications. And you said in the last hour that the 1984 edition is available and that a lot of people want that?
Yes, sir. Some people have said that they prefer that. Now, it does have a word guide incorporated in that one volume. I mean, that might be the reason. And there are some things in it that are not in the updated version. But the updated, revised, expanded, and 2016 version carries just about everything that's in the original 1984 edition. That's not the real original edition. The real original edition consists of just about 6 pages. I mean, that I had back in 1956. But in the 1984 edition, I usually call that original. That's how it's listed on the website, producejustice.com, as the original, because that was, it just covered just about everything that I had worked on in a synopsis fashion. Synopsis meaning I put most of the ingredients in it that I wanted to say.
Okay.
In the 1984 edition at that time. Now, that's 1984. Now, from 1984 to 2016, that's quite a few years in between.
Yes, sir.
So, between those years, I thought of things of putting into a next volume if I would last long enough to do it. I did manage to get enough years in to get to 2016, in the year 2016, out in the revised, expanded edition of the 1984 edition. And then prior to that, I put out a word guide in 2010. And if you see on the cover of the book, it says 2010, copyrighted Neely Fuller. That's the word guide. Shows you, as an individual, the words to use, the words not to use. Not all of them, but a lot of the words. Because there's a lot of words in the English language. I mean, if I was going to use all the words in the English language, you wouldn't be able to carry around. If you've ever seen a real dictionary, it's on wheels, because that's what you need. You need a whole wagon to load it around. All right, if you're going to have just most of the words that are in the English language.
Yes.
And you'll find that in a lot of libraries. But I'm talking about using the words that you would use in a codified, counter-racist manner.
Thank you.
What words to ask questions about more than anything.
Thank you.
And that's a lot of words.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Go
sir.
to producejustice.com, and all of the books, all of the volumes are there.
All righty.
Producejustice.com.
All right, thank you. 1-877-932-9766 is the number that you can still call to get in, but we're going to go to the Gmails. This is from Mrs. T, and she says this, Mr. Fuller. She said, Mr. Fuller, have you ever heard of the movie Imitation of Life? And if so, what are your thoughts on it? I think everyone should watch it, and it will be an asset to your library as well. There are 2 versions of the 1934 with Claudette Colbert, and I didn't know that, and the 1959 version with Lana Turner. Mr. Fuller, have you seen or heard of the movie Imitation of Life, and what can be gleaned from that, in your opinion?
Oh, I've seen it, and it's an excellent movie. It's about people passing for white. You know? And also there's another movie called Pinky with Gene Crane.
Pinky?
I think it's in the... Yeah, Pinky.
Pinky, okay.
Right. And that's an interesting movie along the same lines. And there's another movie called Lost Boundaries. And these movies are not on my list, but I say any movie. Anytime a black person is sitting in a theater and you're looking at a screen, look for the lessons that you can walk out of that theater with, that you can use. Lessons that you can use in a constructive manner. Now, a lot of movies are just full of garbage, and a lot of them are directed toward black people. I mean, so when you come out of that movie, you got a head full of garbage. Okay? Now, that's what you don't want to come out of a movie with.
No.
You want to come out of a movie with something that makes you think. When you look around, you can walk out of a movie and you see the cars coming and going, people are coming and going, and you should be able to say, after you see the very best of movies, I just learned something that I hadn't thought about before.
Yes.
And I'm going to take a different perspective on some of my thinking after having seen that movie.
Yeah.
Now, these are the best movies.
Okay.
Movies that make you think at a level that you didn't think about before. And that level is more of a constructive value than before you saw that movie.
Yes.
Your thinking is at a more constructive level than it was before you saw the movie.
We have it on our graphics right now. I don't know what version of it. Probably the 1959. Yeah, we have it on our YouTube area there where they're showing that. But yes, I believe you're correct, Mr. Fuller. It is a
Imitation of Life, Pinky, and Lost Boundaries.
Lost Boundaries.
Those are three movies about black people passing for white people, and what and some storylines behind what that's about.
Okay.
And the effects, and some of it is based on true stories, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, true stories.
Right.
Okay. My phone line's working or what here? Okay, phone line. Okay. All right. Caller, in the remaining moments, did you have a call for Mr. Fuller? Are we ready for that? Okay. Just what we're going to do. You got me? I'll keep going? Okay. All righty, until we get that in. Brother Jermaine, I hope that the announcement concerning the donations for the second hour was sufficient for you. That's where all the donations go, to the second hour of this production, which you wanted. Again, Mr. Fuller and myself are not compensated for this whatsoever. This is it. So I hopefully your question has been done. Let's see here. People are talking about, wait a minute, here it is. People are talking about this, Mr. Fuller, a statement that you made a couple of weeks ago. In fact, you kept on repeating it, but there are apparently some that do not understand that. And it was written that like this, you said, and this is their quote, I do at all times give respect the same way or same respect that the flag, I do respect at all times the flag the same way that the flag respects me. Could you give that quote?
No,
just
it's not.
Okay, I'm just reading what they wrote.
The word respect is not in there.
Okay.
Right.
Well, so what did you say?
It's relate.
Relate. That's what they meant to say.
This is a pledge that you can make to any flag, and it will be right on point at any time, anywhere. I do at all times relate to the flag the exact same way that the flag relates to me. Now, you can make that pledge anywhere, anytime, anywhere on the planet, to any flag, and you will be telling the truth. It's impossible not to be telling the truth when you make that pledge. A lot of flag pledges are not telling the truth.
Right.
All right?
Okay.
I'm not going to name them because I don't know the flag pledges, but I'm familiar with, at least one.
Okay, so let's do this.
And there are words in that pledge that do not tell the truth.
Okay.
That's number one.
All right.
See what I mean?
Yes, sir.
So this flag pledge is always telling the truth.
Okay, the word is relate, not respect. It's relate.
Yes, right.
Okay, got it.
I do at all times, underline all, even when you're asleep, you're relating to that flag the exact same way that flag is relating to you.
Okay, got it.
It's impossible not to.
Okay, got it. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead quickly.
Hello, am I on?
Go ahead quickly because we're running out of time.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. My name is Bill Moore. I'm from Rochester, New York. And I would just like to add to the movie list something that I thought was very pertinent. There's a movie called The Usual Suspects. And in that movie, what I got out of it was that the main character, the enemy, the person that did the most damage, operated it under what the concept of the familiar mystery, in which he was never known to be the person that was doing all the evil.
Kaiser Soze or whatever.
Right, Kevin Spacey was the main character, and nobody saw what he was doing. He operated right in the midst of the people, his victims, and he made everybody a victim. He was always underestimated. They didn't think he had the ability or anything to do what he did. And it was just an excellent movie, and it's an appropriate title for what we do.
Yeah, The Usual Suspects is that movie.
Usual Suspects.
Yes.
The guy that was the actual villain operated right in the face of everybody. And I would just like, if you would, Mr. Fuller, to please expound a little bit, talk a little bit about the concept of the familiar mystery.
Okay, Mr. Fuller, you have about 45 seconds. Go ahead.
Yes, that's a term I used in the textbook. And I say that black people, non-white people, are looking at white people all day long in a lot of places. Now, somebody called in earlier from South Africa and say that's not true in South Africa. It's a lot of black people who don't come in contact with white people at all right, because the white supremacists got it set up that way, okay? They deliberately did that so that contact is not there. But in many parts of the world, like in the northwestern hemisphere, black people are looking at white people all day long in most places and whatnot. And many of these, not all, but obviously, logically, many of these white people are white supremacists.
Okay.
Not all. I never say all. I say many of them, the most powerful ones, the smartest ones, are white supremacists.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr.
Based on evidence.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fuller. We got to leave it there. They're on me. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carl.